Yeah, I'll call myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and young people at home, our panel members joining us this evening, senior government officials that are part of this important discussion, which is one of our many programs as the province of KwaZulu-Natal as we engage on issues pertaining to young people on this Youth Month. My name is Tami Zondi. I am the Director for Youth Economic Empowerment in the province of KwaZulu-Natal under the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. I will be your facilitator of the session for today, and we hope that young people will get to engage with our panel members and we get to empower each other, which is the whole essence of having the Youth Month celebrated or commemorated in South Africa. We all know, or for those of you who do not know, this year we commemorate the Youth Month under the theme Youth Power Growing South Africa in the period of COVID-19. We are living in a difficult time. There's a pandemic that is faced or that is upon us, COVID-19. But be that as it may be, youth power is still needed and we need to tackle many issues. We've seen the province doing a whole lot of other programs, including the Youth Day that was addressed by the Premier and the MECs of the province. Today, we're engaging with young people on one of the very important topics, as I said, which is youth and the law. And we have panel members. And I will be introducing these panel members just shortly, and we'll be getting their input as well as allowing young people that are streaming live as we live under this new normal to engage with us. But it is important before we dive into it to sort of like set the scene and be on the same page as to why, amongst other things, we are having this particular program of youth and the law. We do all know as young people streaming at home and all different platforms that law and the issues around the law affect us as young people in many fronts, as you will see in some of the topics that we'll cover. Therefore, it becomes important that we engage. But more so, as we celebrate the 44th anniversary of June 1976 this year in 2020, it also coincides with the release of our former democratic president, President Dr. Nelson Mandela, who was released in jail in 1990, which is 30 years ago. And for those of you maybe might be even younger, because we know youth start from 14 to 35. For those of you who might be younger, you would maybe not know that Dr. Nelson Mandela was a lawyer by profession, but most of us do know the same. So it is also under the very same spirit and the same theme that we need to celebrate the life of Dr. Nelson Mandela. But more than anything, I mean, if you're touching on the issues of the law, you are saying that young people are also responsible. Young people are also in the spaces that matter in society, because we know that a society without law is a society without order. And without further ado, it is important that I then introduce to young people our panel members that they will be coming and addressing you in the order that I'll be introducing them. You will have Mr. X Zuma, which is Mr. Xolani Zuma. He will be covering or taking us on a topic of police and legislation governing the law industry. So he will really take us into the nuances of the laws of the law, if I can call it, the policies and legislation around the industry. But secondly, we'll also have Ugamdane, Mr. El Ngobese. He will take us through the role of young people in legal law. So it will mainly focus on the legal law and the role of young people as far as that fraternity is concerned. We also have Miss Mthembu. It is important to have Imbogoto within our midst as we do this thing. We have a young woman, and Miss Mthembu will really be touching issues that I think young people will want to engage upon, and that is the issues of being a woman and running your own business in this particular law industry. She will talk to challenges, and she will talk to a number of issues, mainly around being a young entrepreneur who's also in the legal field. And I think most young people are gearing up to engage with her and engage with the rest of the panel around those issues. And then we've got Mr. Nomvalo, who will talk about the struggle that is faced by young people as they try to qualify as legal practitioners, mainly within the clerkship experiences. We know that law, like other professions, like your accounting, like your engineering, people, before they get registered with their professional bodies, they do need to be admitted by the relevant authorities. As such, they need to do their articles. So he will take us through that and really take us through the journey and the struggles that young people face. And it is through such discussion that we hope that even the people that are running the industry will hear the plight of young people and be able to say, how do we assist young people around this area? And also very important, even for the younger generation that will be streaming on this particular debate, is what Mr. Mkhize will be covering. Kabazela will be talking on the issue of careers in the law. Then we look at, because the industry itself is broad, so we need to look at the various careers that are there. I do hope that everyone and every young person is ready to engage, and every young person is ready to ask questions, and we'll all be, at the end of this particular session, be better empowered. And without further ado, can I welcome Mr. Xolani Zuma, our first panel member to present. Msholozi. Babu Zuma, I will leave the stage to you, sir, to take us through policy and legislation governing the law industry. Stage is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. I just hope that colleagues can hear me. Thank you. Let me firstly extend my sincere greetings to all the colleagues who are present here and all the young people from the entire province of KwaZulu-Natal, and also the leadership of government in KwaZulu-Natal, from the DG, from the DDG present, and all other colleagues, and say we are indeed delighted to be invited here to share our experiences and also to engage with young people, particularly on the occasion of the June 16 and this month, which is very important for young people in our country, particularly taking into cognizance the history around it, but also, as you have indicated, Program Director, that we meet also in a year where we celebrate 30 years since our icon, President Nelson Mandela, was released from prison. I must, of course, Chair, indicate that from where we're sitting as there are, of course, not so young people, because some of us were young a couple of years ago, but now we've passed that stage. But the benefits that we enjoy today are, of course, as a result of the struggles that were waged by the generation of our icon Nelson Mandela and many other people that came before us, particularly within the field of law. And I must indicate, Chair, that the practice of law is a very complicated practice, and you would agree with me, and many of our colleagues would agree that it is a highly regulated practice, But be that as it may, it is also not a practice where you just have to comply with the law, but you have to deal with the inner being, which is yourself. And that deals really with the issues of ethics, because that is the most important thing that for any other young person that wants to become a lawyer, and not just an ordinary lawyer, of course, because I mean, there are quite a number of lawyers in the field, but there's a distinction between a lawyer and an exceptional lawyer. And that begins with you understanding that you must be an exception in terms of your ethics. And all these things, the program director, they find expression from what used to be, as it were, your repealed, Attorneys Act, which was then, repealed, and we now have the new Legal Practice Act, which is the 2014 one, which is the Act 28 of 2014, which, if I'm not mistaken, came into effect in 2018. Of course, it comes with various changes and and it creates some possibilities in terms of transformation, which in our view, it's something that we must welcome from the part of government. But of course, I'll come to that later, Chair, to indicate that, as much as you may have documentation as policy positions and legislation as part of what assists you in terms of transformation, but transformation is not documented. Transformation is practical. And it's a question of how then do you ensure that what is in the document then finds expression in terms of, your practical being, because that's a living document. Legislation by its very nature, it is indeed a living document. Perhaps just to go back, Chair, I must indicate, and I'm going to try and make sure that I'm done within 5 minutes, to indicate that as much as the legal industry has always had legislation, but has always had challenges as well, insofar as transformation is concerned. And you'll see that, Chair, particularly around issues of your demographics. For instance, currently in the country, we have approximately 27,000 odd attorneys in the country. And if you look at the demographics there, you would see that young people are trailing behind. But what makes it even more worse is that you have the percentage in relation to women being quite low. And those are some of the issues that perhaps in terms of policy issues, government must then look into. But of course, young people will then ask questions as to, when you talk about policy positions and legislation, what do I have to know for me to become a lawyer? And of course, I think it starts from you going to the university. And the first thing is that we must understand that issues of criminal records, are issues that, must not be, things that are very friendly to you. Must always, ensure that, because the principle of law and the principle for lawyers is that, this profession is really it's a profession for organic and refined intellectuals. And if you're a refined intellectual, it means you must obviously be, less friendly to issues that have to do with, crime, whether it's corruption, whether it's fraud, or anything of that sort. That talks to the policies that governs, the conduct of our lawyers in our country. And that is why once you become a lawyer, or once you get into legal fraternity, that is why then you must be registered and you must do your PLT, your board exams, and the legislation then kicks in there in terms of your conduct. There are policies and they entail how how many times you must be at work and how many times you must not be at work for you to be admitted and all of that. But I think that's a story for another day. But critical to that is colleagues must understand, particularly young people, that as lawyers, for instance, you have things that you must do annually, which is your audited reports that must go to the law society, because you just can't practice, without your books being looked into, particularly your trust account, because you are managing funds of your clients, whether it's government, whether it's the private individuals, whether it's companies, but you have to account for those funds. But you also have to account for your conduct. You have to account for, the files, how you manage those particular files. And that is through, the law society, or what we now know as a legal practice council. So you have to submit those reports, and the policies entail how clients can always report you where they are not happy with your services, where they are not happy with your conduct. And therefore, colleagues must always be alive to those realities, that whatever that you do in terms of policy positions, that is actually there. But of course, you have the Legal Practice Council, which was actually elected, if I'm not mistaken, last year, which obviously has numbers in terms of, I think it's about 16 colleagues there, 10 of them being attorneys. practicing attorneys, and then 6 of them being practicing advocates. Those are people that, sit and on daily basis look at our conduct, ensure that in terms of policy positions, they're able to take those positions, but also there are issues of your fidelity fund, which must be managed so that when attorneys have, in issues of negligence that they've committed, and then clients can be paid from that. So those are issues and intricacies in terms of policy positions. However, Chair, so that I don't take much of your time, I must indicate that as much as you have those policies, but there is a greater need. So I know there is a colleague who's going to come and cover the issues of policy positions around issues of kind attorneys. But I must say that as practitioners, we are calling upon government to come to the, to the arena to say, how to ensure, for instance, that these young people that are sitting at home, many young people, particularly when we talk about the pandemic now, are struggling to get access to, your articles of clerkship. How do you ensure that we venture and talk into the question of the skills fund, where government can work with the private sector to say, how do you absorb these young people, create policy positions to ensure that, all these law firms that absorb young people, then they get the stipend, and then you get your articles. And I must say, Chair, as I close, as I draw towards closure, that the legacy of apartheid continues to haunt us within this practice. They continue to haunt us, particularly if you look at even the disparities in terms of the number of black judges, the number of female judges, magistrates, and many other colleagues, even attorneys that are practicing. You have those policy challenges, which I think government must come into the party to deal with those particular issues. Particularly because these are things that our icon and many others who came before us, Nelson Mandela, fought for. And we begin to see continue to see these challenges, particularly even on policy positions in terms of how government is also dealing with the briefing patterns for attorneys. How many young black attorneys were below the age of 35, even excluding us, who are now 37 and above, that are getting decent work from government. And these are policy positions that I think government must then obviously look into. And I think we need to talk about also the transformation of the judiciary. And transformation is not about color. Transformation is about conduct, is about people understanding their transformative agenda that the country is driving. And I think those are issues that in terms of policy positions that we must drive. Without a chair, because I understand that we have limited time, let me pause there and perhaps hand over back to you. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Zuma, for taking us through that very detailed presentation. And I hope that young people at home are taking note of what you're saying, and we will be feeding through some of their questions to all our panel members, including Mr. Zuma. And we understand that we're actually doing this virtually in the new normal. We hope and believe that all our panel members will stay online for the duration of the engagement with us, so that you are able to take or answer certain questions that can come through from young people. I'll ask that from panel members. But indeed, Mr. Zuma touched on a number of issues that I think are of very much interest. One thing that he speaks about, which particularly is one of an interest area, I think for many young people, including myself as well, is the whole issue of ethics. He makes a difference between an exceptional lawyer and just being a normal lawyer. And he says the differentiation there will be the whole issue of ethics. And indeed, it goes on to the whole issues around policy position that needs to happen in order to open access in the industry, mainly for the previously disadvantaged people, which I think most young people who aspire to be lawyers and those who are lawyers today will agree with him. But moreover, we also believe that the captains of the industry will be able to hear such debates and such important pronouncement made by young people, also talking around on the whole issue of policy, the fact that policy has to evolve in terms of addressing the issues of the current day and the current times. And indeed, we thank you, Mr. Zuma, and we will engage with you further. And without wasting more time, we will now be joined by Mr. El Ngobese. He will take us through the role of young people in the legal law. So, Kamdana, if you can speak to young people of KwaZulu-Natal and those that are also streaming outside the province, that's the beauty of technology.
KZN online.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to everyone, to colleagues online, and to all people streaming. Thank you for the opportunity. I think to bring light in this topic, I'll start with highlighting our theme, which is youth and the law. Chair, our legal fraternity is not immune to social factors which are affecting us as people before we become lawyers. Those issues, they have a huge impact on what kind of a lawyer or what type of a lawyer you become or you want to become. So in addressing my topic, I think there's a huge lack of youth activism with regards to social issues that we are facing as young people, and also as people of South Africa. It's very hard now to find young members or youth which emulate the likes of Anton Lembede and Dr. Nelson Mandela. Those leaders were able to combine activism and practice. With the current state of our country and the current state of our nation, it's very hard for young people to engage in such activities simply because the social factors play a very huge role in them deciding what to do with their time. So it's much easier for young people to choose their careers or therefore that leads us to a point where we have very limited people engaging on social issues which they can make a difference on. For example, the issue of free education. If as a country we are at a state where young lawyers are able to take their time off work and focus on social issues and other issues that affect young people, I think, not because I'm saying lawyers are above other intellectuals, but they are at an advantage to be able to provide solutions because their work or their scope of work details or entails mostly providing solutions to problems. Therefore, as a country, we are governed by laws, and the people who are more in a good position to give knowledge and to share knowledge with others are the law practitioners, the young lawyers, and the people who are still active and who still care very much about the future and the future of others. So, Chair, there is a lack of young active lawyers with regards to social issues, simply because of social issues that they are affecting young people, especially young Black people. Chair, if it was possible, I think lawyers need to be given enough resources. They need to be given enough platforms which are similar to this one to ensure that their role that they play is more active, because relying on that in order for issues of young people to change, there has to be marches, there has to be protest. Unfortunately, that cannot always yield productive or helpful results. So, Chair, I think we are still lacking in young people activism, and I think it should be corrected. And in our field, it's also affecting us as young people because as a young person, when you start open a law firm, one of the first things that affects you is funding. There is a very huge lack of funding, and to an extent that even the board corporate or the board that is governing lawyers, it does not play much of a role in assisting those young people. The young lawyers and young upcoming lawyers, after serving their articles of selection, they have no direction. because they can't be employed, and they can't raise even those concerns to proper platforms, and they can't even march because maybe it's because of their profession or because of their numbers, but they don't have a voice. So that leads our profession to be scattered and our views to be divided, and that is a very bad influence to the young people in our profession. Because if the profession is not producing young lawyers and young practitioners, then we have a problem, because it's not only the lawyers that that are produced by the law degree. We also have prosecutors. Even those young people who have aspirations of becoming prosecutors, they also don't have enough guidance. They also don't have enough information with regards to that. So that thing can only be fixed by ensuring that the young practitioners are well equipped with the resources, and they can be able to afford to have spare time to share knowledge with others, and also to assist other young upcoming colleagues. So, Chair, in closing, Chair, I'll say young people or young practitioners do want to play a role in development of fellow young professionals. They do want to take part in many progressive programs, but the only barrier that we have currently are social issues. They can't dedicate their time simply because they have to prioritize putting food on their table rather than other issues. So the role of young people in law activism is very minimal, but it can be improved with ensuring that we cover the social issues affecting them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Kamdane. You've given us a mouthful there, and I'm sure many young people that are within the industry of law will agree most of your points, and you're raising very important issues when we look at the role of young people and legal law in the country. I mean, touching to the whole issues around the social issues that are faced by young people. But you, as you speak, you remind me of a saying that we used to love when we were still in school, that each one teach one. That it is indeed one of the things that we will encourage young people that are within this industry, that once you are in, let's develop our own culture of teaching each other. I've had encounters with many young people who are recent law graduates, and they will tell you about their struggle in the big law firms, how hard for starters to get in there. And when you are in there, as you were just articulating, Lungelo, to say that there are a whole lot of other issues that then people are facing when they are in there. But at the end of the day, I mean, if young people within law themselves in the industry, those who are ahead are able to start their own firms, and they're able to, mingle amongst themselves, I think will certainly increase the role of young people in the industry. Definitely, speaking of which, young people starting their own firms and playing a bigger role, that is exactly where Usnenhlanhla comes in as a young woman who's part of this particular program. Usnenhlanhla Wakamthembu, she will be sharing with us challenges that they face as young women, but also just take us through to say, how do you start your own law firm as a young person? And even then, what challenges do you face? Mamthembu Mvelase, the stage is yours.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we are all yours. We are all yours.
Okay. I needed to be certain. So first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity by the government to speak out and also represent the women in the legal fraternity. Like my learned friend who spoke first, women are still lacking and this platform that has been given to me, I believe is also going to assist to encourage more women to come in and join the profession. Hoping that there are a few young women who are watching and they will be encouraged and they will know that I'm also not the only one. There are quite a few of us, but we still are lacking and we need a few more. Now, before I start with my conversation, I just have a plea to the government in regards to encouraging women, and how to do so is offer funding like this spoke now. Funding for law students seems to be one area that is neglected when it comes to governments. I will put NSFAS aside because NSFAS is for every single student in the country. When it comes specifically to law students, it's one area that is neglected. And we all know that we still find that there are households where it's believed that it's a boy child that can only go to university. And therefore, if government comes in and offers bursaries, a girl child will not feel that burden, that if I come from a household where it's believed only a boy child can go to university, they also would feel that they have an opportunity to study. I'm not sure how the situation is right now, but I remember when I was still studying, I couldn't find any bursary from government, any sort of funding from government that's specific to law. Bursaries only come from private companies or the Fidelity Fund, which is a fund by our council. I really, really do feel like this field is neglected and the government should please hear our plea when it comes to that department. Now, to deal with the challenges in the profession, and I must speak about this considering the fact that there is a huge outcry by women due to the gender-based violence. And I think it's fair to mention one of the biggest issues that women who are still working towards getting qualified as attorneys or advocates are experiencing. And it's sad to know and to find out that women are, whilst they're doing their articles, get sexually harassed by their principals. Now, just for ease of reference to anyone who may be watching or listening, articles are an internship program basically for attorneys or people who want to become attorneys. And then your principal is basically somebody who is your boss or the person you report to when you are doing your articles. I think, to put it bluntly, it's quite a disgrace for people in those positions to sexually harass someone whom they know desperately needs to complete their articles so that they can be qualified. I myself know a handful of my colleagues who have been through that. Some chose to give up, and that means that you're giving up on your career, you're giving up on your passion and your love. Some chose to stay and endure the pain and the turmoil for those 2 years because they just wanted to complete their articles and get qualified. But that is a very big issue. It's been coming up many times. I believe there needs to be a platform where our candidate attorneys are able to report such behavior and they do not fear reporting, because some people will tell you that I'm scared because I can't go back and work at that same place when I've reported my principal. So there needs to be a platform where candidate attorneys do come out and feel comfortable to speak about such things, because it's a very serious issue, especially with our current situation in the country. Now, a second challenge is our gender discrimination and the stereotype. It's still a thing in the century we live in. Surveys have been done that show that women hardly make it as equity partners in law firms, which also results in a wage gap between our males and our females, which is discrimination based on gender, because you find that you get told the reasoning will be you're not much of an asset to us because you're still going to go and have children. You're going to want to take leave. You're going to want to get off work early because you have to go watch your kids play sports because you become a mother. So those things are gender, that's gender discrimination, and it's unfair to say I can't be a partner because I'm a woman, because I have other responsibilities outside of my work. Things are gradually changing, I will say, and we hope that women will gain more representation at higher levels. The stereotypes that women we face are that we are soft and we cannot handle aggressive cases. And you find that this doesn't only come from our peers in the company, but it comes even from the clients themselves. But I think in order to bridge the gap, both men and women need to work together to create this unbiased work environment and culture. And also, we need to be aware that men have been conditioned that they are leaders and they are superior. So, in some way, we need to gently assist them to, from the time that they're young, that they need to know that women are also capable of being at the same level as they are. This then means that when once they're older, there's no need to try and push their agenda to them to understand that a woman is equal to you. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to try teach our kids from the age that they're young and to understand that no, a woman is also, capable of doing what you do. Um, my second pointer is challenges faced by women in society with regards to reporting crimes against them. This is going to be a very hard pill to swallow because it's for our actual government. Our SAPS seems to be failing women in the country. A woman will approach a police station to report a crime against them, and they will be told by officials that we don't like opening such cases because women turn around and forgive their said partners. Now, I'm not thumb sucking these issues. I'm a lawyer after all. I speak on factual things, and I need to be speaking on something I'm certain of. Now, it is not, it's sad basically that the same officials who are meant to protect us turn us away. And so what if she cancels the charge? At that particular moment when she comes to you, she needs your protection. I think something needs to be done with that. And women also do need to be educated about the resources of government and not wasting government resources. But it needs to be something that's looked into so that we do not feel the fear of approaching officials whenever we encounter such issues. Another issue is a societal one, that women will tend to be against each other when it comes to crimes against each other. Women now defend perpetrators, and we fail to stand together and be united. I'm not sure how and why that is happening, but it's a big issue. It's a societal issue, and we shouldn't be second doubting a woman when there's a crime or an issue that has occurred, especially if it's been done by the opposite. Those are some of the issues that I've noticed, I've heard, and I've seen. With that being said, Sizi Mbogodo at the end of the day, like it's been mentioned, we are capable, we are strong, we can make things happen, which goes to my point of being an entrepreneur, starting your own law firm at a young age, and how to go about it. Obviously, I wouldn't get into the nitty gritties and the administrative part of it, but I can't stress enough how you need two things to even think or even think of where your office is going to be or what matter you're going to handle. But you need courage and confidence when it comes to thinking of starting your own law firm. Those are the first two things you need to have. Forget the money and wait for talent. Forget get a lot of things, but courage and confidence are the first things you need to position that you have. Um, Courage will allow you to make bold decisions and to make that bold move and say, I'm starting my own law firm now. So courage will take you a long way from the first time you make that decision to start your own law firm and to make even bolder decisions as you go along. Thereafter, you're going to need confidence in yourself as well as knowledge, confidence in the knowledge that you have. Then you can start about the money and where you're going to get funds and where you're going to have your office. But first, have those two things, courage and confidence. Thereafter, you're going to have to map out and plan. I'm not sure whether I am here because I'm generally a planner, but I believe in taking such a big decision, you can't just wake up tomorrow and say, "Oh, I'm going to start my own law firm." How I'm going to do it is is God's business, or but you need to sit down and to map out and plan everything to the T, to where and how you will buy your first rim of paper. You need to plan that out. Why do I say so? This is because it will allow you the freedom and comfort to, once you've started your practice and it's up and running, you'll be able to focus on your actual work and start making money for yourself instead of stressing about certain things or stressing about the functionality of your practice. If you've planned things out and you've set out that I'm going to plan out for 6 months, this should last me 6 months, this should do this for 6 months, you're able to focus and be comfortable in your work instead of stressing about those, which will mean you're a productive person. So I'm generally a planner, so it assisted me, but I always encourage that when you're going to take a big step and a lifetime step like that, to plan things out. Now, your first few clients that you will get will be your very most important clients. All of your clients are important, but these ones are the ones you need to definitely make sure you leave a good impression to, because these are the people that will put in a good word for you to other people. Because unfortunately for us, word of mouth is what generally gets us business. So if you're not going to leave a good impression in your first few clients, they're not going to speak about you, they're not going to refer you. So you need to make sure that even if you don't know where you're going to get clients, but the first clients that you do get, leave a very good impression. Those people will tell other people who will tell other people about you. And that's how you're going to get clients and be successful in your business. Now, also get a mentor, get someone who will guide you and encourage you when you get stuck or you get lost in a way. It's a learning journey after all. You find attorneys who are been practicing for 10 years, 15 years, but this everything is changing, whether it's technology, whether it's legislation, whether it's everything is changing. So you need somebody who's going to hold your hand and who's going to guide you and who's going to show you the way. somebody who's obviously ahead, or even if it's a peer, but whom you know has got a vast knowledge of what you know, because you may know one aspect. And this doesn't only refer to legal, it refers to any profession. You need somebody to guide you, to be there when you need assistance. So I would encourage in doing that, and also getting as much support as you can from family and friends. Running a business generally is a catch-22 situation. So you're going to need some sort of support. You're going to need some sort of balance from someone or some people. So I encourage that. I encourage gaining knowledge before you go out and start a business. I always refer to something my dad always used to tell me how, Chair, I'm not sure if I'm going over time, just one last point, how people will work their whole entire life, and then when they retire, they take their retirement money and start a business. And you find that that person has never, ever in their life even sold a sweet. Now, how do you expect to take your whole pension fund and put in a business when you've got no insight of how a business operates? Start now. Start while you're working. If you feel like you're a business person, you want that, start now. Start little. I started by doing makeup business and stuff like that. And I realized, no, this is what I can do. This is what I would like to do. So gain knowledge and experience in entrepreneurial skills, and then take that bold decision, go off, start your own company or law, whatever it may be. But I'm proof. I'm here to say it's possible. And I really encourage my peers to take that step and go for it, basically. Thank you so much, Chair.
Wow. Thank you so much, Snenhlanhla. Well said, Snenhlanhla Mthembu. There was a young person talking to other young people, sharing her journey. You will notice that Sneh, shared a lot with us. Indeed, I mean, she was talking about the profession, the law itself, but at the same time also engaging us on the issues of being a young entrepreneur. Not only just being a young entrepreneur, but being a woman entrepreneur in this industry. So, I mean, if anyone were to think that maybe we are doing talks and debates like this for the sake that it's a youth month, indeed, I mean, engaging with people like Abosne, you can see that these are real life issues. She touched on so many issues that is one of the current topical issues at the moment, the whole issue of gender-based violence, which women are facing even when trying to get into this particular industry. And those are real life issues. It's not just a talk. It's not just us convening here today simply because we want to have a youth program. But what I like Snake Akulu, when you go to the issues of business, you are showing that, and you are encouraging other young people in this industry and perhaps even other industries, because they can learn. Because at the end of the day, you can have the technical or the professional skills of your particular industry, but you need to be ready when you're venturing into the business side of things. I mean, you talk about the whole issues of planning. There's a saying that failure to plan is planning to fail. So that's a very fundamental thing of business, and I hope that young people are taking note. And indeed, at the end, we'll come back and maybe ask you one or two questions, all the panel members, and also see from our social media platforms if we've got any questions from young people. But in the interest of time, we'll move on to Usbonelo Nomvalo to take us through his insight as well. He's going to take us through the whole issue of the hardships that young people face around the clerkship, that whole process. And all the three speakers have already touched on what young people in the industry experience as they venture into trying to be qualified lawyers, as it were. So, Mr. Nomvalo, can you take us through the clerkship process?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening to everyone. And let me start by expressing my deepest appreciation for the opportunity that we've been given to come and share our thoughts with young people out there, and especially with young people who aspire to be legal gurus in the near future. But on that note, Chair, I also want to make a disclaimer that us discussing the problems that are being faced by candidate attorneys does not mean that we discourage those who aspire to do law. We are just discussing them with a view of trying to find amicable solutions, because these problems are there, they are prevalent. So it will be a monumental blunder for us if we were not attending to them. And the only way we can attend to them is by exposing them through discussions. And also, Chair, I also want to give recognition to one important person in the legal profession who made it clear, or who aspired confidence to the Black nation that it's also possible for young people and for Black people in particular, for them to become lawyers, because the law profession was historically known as a profession that was white dominant. So the likes of Tata Mandela is one of the people who aspired to Black people, that this thing is not only for white, but also Black people can become lawyers. Chairperson, my task is very simple, is to discuss challenges and struggles that are faced by candidate attorneys during their service of articles of clerkship. I just want to start, Chair, by discussing one of the aspects that I think it constitutes a problem that is being faced by candidate attorneys during their service of article. And I'll term it as a gatekeeping a requirement that is imposed by law firms when they advertise for posts for candidate attorneys. The requirements that they make that for you to be considered, you must have a driver's license, you must have your own car. That is a class discrimination, because it means we are looking for a rich person, and that rich person is a person who possibly comes from a white family, because it's a known fact, Chair, that most of us Black people who want to study law are coming from poor backgrounds. Therefore, it's an insult and a clear exclusion from whatever criteria that you are using when you say we must have a car, our own cars, and our own driver's license, because you were not born with a car, and the car is a luxury to us, and the car is expensive. It cannot be bought by anyone. And also license. There are people who don't have licenses because they don't afford to actually do licenses. So I find that as very conservative, and I think it should be treated as a foreign phenomenon within the democratic dispensation, that we can't have such kind of requirements, and the government must come to the fore. And the only way that the government can come to the fore is by legislating or imposing a regulatory framework that will make it to have a proximity to the supervision of law firms. Another aspect that I view as a problem, Chairperson, is a challenge of lack of embracing cultural diversity within the law firms, especially within the so-called high-profile law firms, which are white dominant. Many people who have worked for the white firms, they will tell you that they have depression when they have to go to the workplace. In fact, they have depression because of the experiences that they get at the workplace. They feel totally excluded through the cultural occurrences that happen within the workplace. As a result, some just go there to work, but they don't feel that they are being employees. So I think having a legislation that is going to supervise by the government, that is going to supervise the law firms, can also answer directly to that problem. Because many white firms, it's a reality that many white firms are conservative and they still practice practices of apartheid. And that is precipitated by the fact that they know that they have dominance in their white firm. There is no supervision. There is nobody who comes and check if everything is done in order. So we kindly make or lobby the government to zoom in the operation of law firms within the South African regulatory framework. Another problem, Chair, that I would cite is a problem that my fellow colleague, I think it was Ney, that he has cited, the problem of bullying and sexual harassment. And the majority of people who suffer from this problem are women, young women. A friend of mine once told me that in his firm, their principal was touching their private parts. And I asked her, why did you not report her? She told me that there is no way we could report her because she was like our breadwinner. So reporting him will be running a risk of losing your job. And this is the only job we're having. So that is a huge problem, which I think we need to actually challenge and expose. Black attorneys were in the profession not only because we have appetite of being lawyers, but because we are inspired by courage of transforming or of effecting transformation in South Africa. So we cannot be the ones who hide when we have problems. We must expose them without any fear. And even if it means we are going to suffer from because of exposing them, but we would have done the right thing when we expose them and would have liberated other young people who will come after us. Another problem, Chair, is a problem of what I would call ambiguous and open-ended job description. You know, there is this tendency in law firms. You know, when you get employed in many law firms, you will be told that when you ask what is your job description, you will be told that you do anything that is done here. And that anything means that you will also go fetch children for your principal, and that will mean you'll also go buy groceries, and that will mean you can do anything at any time that you are being sent to do by your principal. So it's one problem that we should confront, and I think that problem is exacerbated by the fact that in fact, there is no proper legislative framework of candidate attorneys. So we just go there on a blank check. The only area of statutes that talks about candidate attorneys is the Legal Practice Act. And other than that, there is nothing there is nothing that talks about the candidate attorneys. So I think that's where many principals find an opportunity to exploit candidate attorneys. So I think that is a call that we can make within our government officials, to our government officials, to really take this matter very serious and also make sure that we really find expression in the form of a legislation. Another problem, Chair, is a problem which I think my colleagues have spoken about, the problem of a low stipend. In fact, of an unreasonable stipend. It's a reality that there are firms that are still paying candidate attorneys 500 Rand per month. And you are given no choice. You are told that it's either you take it or leave it. It's because they know that we are desperate. There's nothing you can do, and we have no option. And mind you, most of those people who receive such indecent salaries are breadwinners at home, are people who look after, they are heading their households. So their families depend on them. And remember that within this 500 Rand, you also have to pay for your needs. You must pay your bus fare, you are renting, and you are eating, you are wearing, like any other human being. And also you must look like in society so that you are not going to suffer from societal convictions. You must also be presentable, look like a professional, because you have studied for so many years to become this professional. So it's a very disturbing insult to professionals that after studying for 4 years and you have gone through the practical and training program, and then after you receive a stipend of 500 rand. So I think our government must also come to the fore and provide funding for the law firms, because to some law firms it can be justifiable, because they will tell you that in as much as I want to employ candidate attorneys, but I don't have anything in my business account to pay their stipends or their salaries. So the government must actually fund the law firm so that they will pay decent salaries. But equally, we cannot hide from the fact that there are law firms now who are having a very good annual turnover, but because of their backwardness, they don't want to pay decent salaries to candidate attorneys. There are law firms that perhaps make a profit maybe of more than 10 million per annum, but they are still paying their candidate attorneys maybe 3,000. That is an insult. So I think even the law firms must be screened to say how much annual turnover do you make and how much do you pay to candidate attorneys, so that we can be able to rate the unfairness from an informed perspective. But equally, Chair, I think what can address this problem is that the government must actually have a funding. In fact, there is a funding presently, which is under the Department of Higher Education. I think many legal scholars, they don't know this. It's under SACETA. I'm a beneficiary of that program. When I completed my degree, I wanted to go to law school, but I couldn't go. In fact, I couldn't register immediately to law school because I did not have funds. So at law school, you were supposed to have, I think, 3,500 as a deposit for you to be accepted. So I did not have that money. So, and thanks to Mr. Ngata from the Eastern Cape, who took it upon himself to take my struggle to the Department of Higher Education, to Mr. Konde, the DG. Mr. Konde then referred my matter to the director of SACETA. And the director of SACETA called me and processed my application. So I'm saying it's one opportunity that is out there, but young people know nothing about it. And I think it's because it's not marketed. So that's why many people don't know. But if you go on Google and write SACETA, you will see everything and the requirements thereof. So, Chairperson, I think I've managed to summarize some of the challenges that we as young people face during the period of service of articles. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Novalo, for such insightful engagement and contribution. More so, I like the fact that you are definitely taking this platform a step forward by ensuring that, I mean, one of the issues that was raised even by the previous speaker, Ms. Mthembu, was around the whole issue of bursaries for people within or wanting to study for law, which is indeed a fact. As she was speaking, I was actually thinking that indeed most companies that want accounting or engineering students, but if we've got people and we've got platforms like this and we can share information, it's very encouraging. It is also very disheartening to listen to some of the issues that you have been touching to, around the whole clerkship and the issues that you are experiencing as young people as trying to enter particular industry. A whole lot of things that you touched on are very eye-opening, and we are hoping that indeed some of the issues, as you call on, issues of legislation, government can come on board and assist. It will indeed, help the industry and help many young people to come after you guys. And at the end of the day, I also do want to say, I know that the law industries. One very organized industry. We've got the law society, and I think that young people and the relevant people in such societies will also be able to engage and make sure that, I mean, some of those particular issues as you raise them are being able to raise at such organized structures so that when they come to government, government is also not being seen as interfering with the industry as per se. And without any further ado, we'll now take our last speaker and make and hear his input. And we all know that one of the issues that the country faces is the high level of unemployment, and many young people are facing unemployment across industries and across spectrum, and which is why we've got Mr. Mkhize Usia, who will take us to careers in law and give us the insight, for young people to understand the various opportunities as being in the law industry. So, Kabazela, stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I must express my gratitude for the invitation to this meeting and to all my colleagues. It's quite a privilege to be, part of this meeting to address youth and to talk about the challenges facing youth. So, thank you. As you've said, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the careers that are available in law. And I think a lot of young people often confine themselves to thinking I can just be an attorney or an advocate going to court. And they don't think of the many opportunities that are out there that are available. So one of those opportunities, in fact, if I can put it this way, there are 6 career avenues that young people can look at when they're thinking about going into law. One of those is they can become an academic. Obviously, as you know, to become an academic, you'll finish your LLB degree, you probably do a master's, and some may continue and do a PhD. And then you can take up a career in being an academic and being a lecturer at university, which is sometimes, something of interest to many people who like to do research, who like to do a lot of articles, who like teaching. So those are one of the, opportunities or career avenues that young people, can take. The second one, of course, is the traditional one that we all know of, which is becoming an attorney. Of course, to become an attorney, you must attain your LLB degree. You must do your 2 years of articles, and we've had wonderful presentations about that. And once you are then admitted, after your 2-year articles and you've written your board exams, you can then be admitted as an attorney. And generally what an attorney does is they interact with members of the public. They take instructions from members of the public. They prepare legal documents for court. They negotiate and certain, dispute settlements. And they do a lot of mediation often between disputes that involve different clients. And the third one that young people can also, take forward to is to become an advocate. And to become an advocate, as you know, advocates generally receive instructions from attorneys, although now under the Legal Practice Act, things have changed slightly. But advocates are guys that are more into research and drafting. So if you look at yourself and you say, my interest in law, really I enjoy or love research. So being an advocate might be a good thing, but not only that, is everything still fine, Chair? Yeah? Just hearing some background noise.
You are good, sir. Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. So becoming an advocate, an important thing about that is that you have to present cases. So whilst you might enjoy doing research and drafting papers, drafting opinions, you must be cognizant of the fact that you will need to stand before a judge. There might be an audience in court. So you have to be confident in the way that you present, cases. And advocates, of course, Chair, will spend a lot of time, taking instructions, from attorneys in order to draft and prepare pleadings and opinions. Going to the fourth, probably career avenue for young people if they want to become a lawyer in any of these fields, is going into business, what we call the corporate sector. If you go to the corporate sector, it means you can go and present different companies, and you can become what we call a legal advisor, and you can deal with various companies. You can be a legal advisor in tax, for example. You can be a legal advisor in estates dealing with properties. You can go into labor relations. A lot of companies need people with labor skills to sort of handle, any challenges regarding their employees, strikes, and so forth. You can become a legal advisor preparing and vetting contracts, drafting contracts. That often comes handy in a lot of corporate companies. You can be a legal advisor working for listed companies, doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions. You can also go into forensic, auditing, with different companies. So that's what I'll say, the fourth avenue. And of course, then the fifth one is you can become a lawyer in government. And every government department needs a legal advisor. You can become a legal advisor in any of the national, provincial governments. You can become a legal advisor, for example, in the national legislature, which is your parliament, your provincial legislatures. People with legal experience are often required there, not only for advising, but for drafting legislation. So you have a person that is interested in drafting legislation, and that might be something that you might want to do. And then the sixth avenue, Chair, that young people can really look forward to is you can also join an NGO, or what we call a PBO, public benefit organizations. And these are organizations or institutions where the practitioners really fight for social justice. They fight for issues affecting communities, transformation, and various human rights issues. There's a lot of these PBO organizations across the country and across the world, such as Oxfam, Groundwork, People for Human Rights, and so forth. So you can join any of those companies PBOs or public benefit organizations and go and practice law there and be a lawyer involved in social justice. So having a look at these 6 career avenues, we can really see that young people have, quite a wide open choice to be able to go and practice law. And they don't just have to limit themselves to thinking, I need to go and present a case in court. Because I think often that's how a lot of young people see law. If I go back to the career avenue of becoming an attorney, for example, again, being an attorney, there are so many specializations in law that you can pursue. So you don't have to be doing the type of law that will have to get you to court every day, unless you're, of course, passionate about it. And as we can see with some of my colleagues here, they're really excellent in our expertise in areas of court litigation. And if you're really good into that, or you are into that, then yes, you must go after the particular part. Others, the airspaces and how that is governed. You might go into environmental law, which is something which I am practicing in at the moment. You might go into health and safety law, which is also something that I'm practicing in. You might go into commercial law, where you just specialize in preparing contracts, agreements, and so forth. You might go into something, for example, social media law. And again, young people need to think, what are my interests? Do I like anything that has to do with the media, for example? If I do, then perhaps at university, I need to take up either an elective that goes along those lines, or when I join a law firm, I must join a law firm that will practice in a particular area where I want to develop my career. So the issue of careers in law is really an exciting topic. And I think young people need to open their minds when they're thinking about it, and also not be depressed and say there are not so many opportunities out there. And of course, yes, if you think there are not many opportunities, you might end up feeling quite depressed. I have a saying, Chair, that says, if it has to be, it's up to me. If every young person would think like that and say, if I have to make it as a lawyer, it is up to me.
and they think of all these 6 different career avenues that I've spoken about and look at how they can explore these different careers and take them up. For example, one of my colleagues here, Ms. Mtembu, she opened her own law firm at the age of 25. That's excellent. In fact, not just her, all my colleagues that are presenting here have opened their own law firms, and they're all very young. And again, it just shows that you don't have to sit down and say, nobody is taking me for work, I can't get articles, I can't do anything, but you can make something with what you have. Chair, perhaps another important aspect along those lines is the fact that let's take an example of a young person who says, I can't get articles anywhere. We're seeing a trend now where lawyers leave law firms and they open companies. And these are your proprietary limited companies where they are able to just provide some form of legal services to companies without or not under the auspices of being a lawyer or the legal practice counsel. And again, that's an innovative way of working because you're saying, well, I don't qualify at the moment to become an admitted attorney, but perhaps I can open a company and provide different forms of legal services. And one of these other avenues is training. You can become a trainer in law. You can pick a certain legal subject and train and be good at it. So my point here is that as young people in South Africa and KZN, we need to be able to take the initiative, be proactive, and say, if I really want to become a lawyer, be involved, I must make it happen. I must find ways to make it happen. Yes, we must deal with these other issues which my colleagues have brought up, which are challenges in the legal fraternity. But we can't wait for people to make changes for us. We must make the changes for ourselves. And I thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much to Mr. Mkhize for sharing with us the insights around the careers in the industry. And we, of course, do apologize even to people streaming live at home, for we could see that Mr. Mkhize's connection at some point, it was getting some glitches. But nevertheless, we do hope that people got the gist of what you are sharing, which is very important, especially even for young people who are still studying, even at high school level, so that they can plan their career well ahead in advance. You know, as Kabazela, you're speaking and saying a whole lot of things. And after having listened to all the presenters, from the first presenter up to Mkhize at the end, I realized how important it is for people in any particular industry to see how things are intertwined in the way that they work, and more so how the industry also works in relation with other industries, in as far as, you know, opening more business opportunities or career opportunities. I remember one thing, for instance, somebody once told me, and I found myself sharing this with one young person who really had a hardship trying to choose a career one day. This young person says, all I ever want to do is to be a coach, a soccer coach, and then one day maybe be an agent representing players. But my mom wants me to go and study law. And then because of the information that I had, I said to him, you know what, I once had something that apparently if you want to be a soccer agent, there's a minimum amount. I think at the time it was R1 million that you need to have as a business, or else they will waive that if you are a qualified attorney because you are coming with accreditation. So in essence, what your mom is saying, go and study law, will eventually down the line meet with your aspirations of being a person who owns his own sporting or soccer agent company. So in essence, it is important that young people understand that nothing operates or works in vacuum in the world that we live in. And certainly, Mr. Mkhize, you've demonstrated that. And because we still have a bit of time, I would like to engage with our panel members, all of you, and at the same time also engaging with some of the questions that we can pick up from our social media, and just to speak randomly with all of you. I think Nenhlanhla, you're still here. I've first questions, just to go to you, if you can get yourself ready for us to engage a bit with some of the questions that I'm picking up. and some of the notes that I also have, and then we can get to. I mean, just to start on a very easy level. I mean, you said a lot as a young woman. How old were you when you started your own law firm?
25. I was 25.
And what encouraged you? I mean, for instance, one, what encouraged you, and two, how long had you been working? Like after your articles, how long did you work? And you waited for how long before you said, "Now I'm ready. I want to start my own thing"?
So basically, I completed in 20. I did my articles up until half of last year. So I got admitted last year. I only worked for a few months after admission. Now, the one thing that encouraged me was the law firm that I was working for, and I mentioned this on the webinar that we had on June 16, that people will have issues about your age and be concerned about your knowledge of the law and stuff. But I was put in a position where you sort of like feel like you're doing a lot of work than what you should be doing. And you get put in the deep end to a point whereby you learn too much. When you learn something without being taught, that's when you really learn it, because nobody spoon feeds you. You go and look for the knowledge yourself. So in most situations, that's what happened with me in the company that I was working for. And I sat down and I thought to myself, if I can do this on my own and go research and find information on my own, I can possibly run my own law firm on my own. That's when I then took that decision. There are certain reasons that I can't discuss based on my ethical and professionalism on what was happening where I worked, but those are the certain situations that's also pushed me to say, Sneh, you can't resign or sit at home. So rather resign and start your own practice based on the experience and the knowledge that you have now gained. And also, another thing to mention is the field that we're in, we are a close committee. And if you feel you need assistance, you can always ask your senior or somebody who's done a matter before, and they'll always gladly assist you. So basically, to answer your question, what pushed me was the circumstance that I was in where I was working, but also I was in a position where I gained enough knowledge to say I can start on my own. In any case, in the field that we're in, you never learn enough. So if you're gonna wait to say I'm gonna wait up until you were gonna wait forever, basically.
Well, that's very encouraging, Sneh, to see that you are a brave young woman and you are one of those people who turns problems into opportunities. And thank you so much. One last question that I want to have for you. Maybe it's two questions in one, but it's related. When you were talking about your entrepreneurship, you just started your business now. In your one of the most important things is having access to business. You talked about that when you talked about respecting your clients, because everything goes in the word of mouth. Now, the big private companies and public, like government, how do you see them playing a role in terms of giving you law-related work? Because we all know that, when people are looking for a particular law-related matter, they want to go for big names. How can you encourage the powers that be that are listening in terms of, also trusting you guys to say, let me trust this young person, let me give this young person an opportunity to grow their company?
Before I answer that question, it's very, I don't know if people look at you or they listen to a person. But funny enough, I've been approached by quite a few bigger corporates who would want you to do shareholders agreements, etc. for them. And I'm not sure how that has come about for me. And I'm not sure whether they listen to what you say and they observe your how you present yourself. And I wish that opportunity for almost every single person that starts their own practice to have the same opportunity as myself, and somebody giving you the benefit of the doubt and saying, H, as a big corporate or company, I trust you, Snare, with this. Please handle this matter for us. But to answer your question, big companies have big matters to do. And their main focus is their big matters to do. That is without a doubt, because their big matters are, and their bigger clients are their paying clients. I would encourage that, because in as much as they are a big company, there are certain matters of theirs that will fall within the cracks because they want to focus on their bigger clients who pay big money. Now, it would assist upcoming law firms and attorneys to use for these big companies to use them as correspondents for their smaller matters or matters they consider smaller. This allows that attorney to gain momentum and to also prove themselves to clients or to other law firms to say, no, I'm capable of doing this matter. So that is my plea and my encouragement to say, if you're a big law firm in Gauteng, for instance, and you have a smaller matter in Durban, use your upcoming attorneys as correspondents. In as much as the matter is still yours as the bigger law firm, but it allows opportunity for the smaller law firm or the upcoming attorney to also make a name for themselves. And that is how they will also basically grow.
Thank you very much, Sneh. I'm indulging you because I also could see that you are the rose amongst the thorns that we're presenting today. So we need to hear more of your voice. And I think with what you've just said, I would just take one insight from you as the last one, really, from what you're saying, because I mean, you just touched on your experiences and on your experience having to do a shareholders agreement for some law companies. Would you say to another young person that is at home wanting to start their company that it matters what you specialize in? Because it will seem, as you are speaking, that it's easy to venture into business of law if maybe you're focusing on commercial law. I mean, we all know, even general public knows, everybody when they start a law firm, they say, we are chasing IRAF. Everybody wants to do road accident fund. You know, is that how young people need to think? Or you can also be venturing into, you know, crime or any other part of law? You know, does it matter what your specialization or focus is when venturing into business?
I would definitely say, especially if you're still doing your articles, pick your niche and pick what you are comfortable and good at, because people will think of law and think criminals. That's the only thing that they think about. It's either criminals or corporates. They don't know that law is vast. There's a lot of, there's civil, there's a lot of things that you can do in law, right? So if you are still doing your articles, and the reason why I say it's vast is you can never know everything, which is a funny thing, because you will get somebody who approaches you. They'll find out that you're an attorney and advocate, and then they will approach you and say, I've got a copyright matter. Please give me advice. And they forget that we are not open books that know everything. When you go to law school, they'll teach you the basics. Then you go to PLT, practical legal training. They teach you something else. Then you get into the working environment. So you will never know everything. Advocates, you sit down and you research on a specific matter when you get it. But when you find your niche and you say, I'm comfortable, I love this. Personally, I would advise that you stick to it, because you know that's going to be your speciality. If somebody comes with that matter, you don't even waste time. It's your spillion. You know that, no, this is my thing. I know it. You can wake me up at any time at night. Now, don't try and be an all-rounder lawyer, because you're going to get confused. You're going to get stuck. You're going to get, this law is so vast. And people who are qualified attorneys and advocates, they know this, that they sit and they will say, no, I am a labor law advocate. I am a personal injury attorney, because that is what they've chosen. That's what they're comfortable with. And that's what they know, that even if you wake me up at any time of the night, it's my specialty. So I would advise that whilst you're still doing your articles, you find that in articles, you get exposed to quite a few fields. Pick it, decide. Your morals must also come into whether this sits with you, it makes you sleep well at night, and then make sure that once you're done with the articles, it's that venture that you go out into. Don't close yourself into what is being said, whether it's just only criminal, road accident fund, or civil. There's just a lot that you can expose yourself to, basically.
Thank you so much, Sneh. I really needed to give you the space to speak on behalf of other women and really represent. And I think you've done a really good job. I will go to our other panel members, just maybe to pick up a few questions with each and every one of them. Mr. Zuma, if you can get yourself ready, say, because I'm coming to you now and I want to engage with you just a little bit. Look, when one of the panel members, it was Mr. Nomvalo, he was speaking about the whole issue of articleship, and he spoke about the non-existence of legislation that's governing the clerkship process. Would you say that as you were speaking, Mr. Zuma, on policy and legislation governing the industry, that it is really a role of government from a legislation point of view to lead that debate, or yourself as organized professional bodies within law, you need to lead that particular debate, and obviously maybe table your views or your suggestions to government? How would you say, from a legal point of view or from a legislation point of view, that matter can be dealt with? It seems as if Mr. Zuma is not picking me up. I think, Mr. Nomvalo, because you touched on this when Mr. Zuma is picking me up. Xolani Zuma, I hope you got my question. If you can just take us through on your thoughts of saying, in terms of the clerkship process, as one of the panel members was saying, it's one area that is not legislated, and his views was government needs to come closer into monitoring and legislation around, the whole process of clerkship. Would you share the same sentiments, or would you say that perhaps the organized bodies within the industry needs to lead that debate? Mr. Zuma, unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. Yes, we're good to go.
All right. I think the first issue that we need to accept is that the private sector has a responsibility in society, but at the very same time, government has a responsibility. And the answer to that is, what is the responsibility of the private sector? And in my view, the responsibility of the private sector is to create jobs, is to ensure that there's transformation of all industries, particularly within this industry. But the second question then becomes, what then becomes the role of government, particularly around issues now? We're talking about the high rate of unemployment, obviously exacerbated by COVID-19 as well. The responsibility of government in this regard is that it must create an enabling environment for business to thrive. So yes, in answering your question, government has a responsibility in terms of ensuring that it does create that particular environment for business to thrive. How then to do that? The first issue, and I think we've raised this point, and my colleague, Mr. Nomvalo, raised this point, that you cannot expect young people to leave university and then miraculously get employment, because your practices that are particularly owned by Black professionals are struggling. So what you then need is to create some sort of a mechanism or a fund that is going to assist young practitioners to absorb these young people. For instance, he made mention of a particular fund, and I spoke about the skills fund. Do this, for instance, in a form of what you do in terms of internship. And say, if in KZN you have 100 law firms, you then engage with organized institutions of the practice of the private sector to say, the Law Society, the Black Players Association, all other entities, how to ensure that if we have 100 law firms in KZN, each and every law firm absorbs, say, for instance, 3 kind of attorneys, and therefore there is a particular fund which is going to come from government. Then you legislate and say, how are these law firms going to conduct themselves in terms of ensuring that they upskill these particular young people? Because what's the use of taking young people, flocking into these law firms that are owned by, Black professionals, and they're focusing only on one area of law, for instance, criminal law. You have maritime law, which is still, not saturated by, those who are previously disadvantaged because it is ring-fenced for a very few. You have your conveyancing, where there is a serious red tape there, where people can't simply just gain access to that. Even your commercial law broadly. So government must then create, policy positions that would enable the sector to absorb. Because if you look at where we are currently, Black young people are struggling to get into the sector. But again, Chair, I also want to bring this point, because I think on policy issues, it's a very serious point, that it is an indictment on government. That if you look at all the areas of law, for instance, if there is a transaction, a huge transaction on maritime, or any other transaction that is complicated as you call it, that the only attorneys that you find there are the white attorneys and your advocates and all of that. These are policy positions that we must say, in fact, even beyond those of us who are 37 and above. Let's create a basket of young lawyers who are below the age of 35 who are getting decent work from government, who will then be able to transform the sector, but also policies in terms of how these law firms are going to deal with these young people. Because the issues of sexual harassment, the issues of males not employing females because they believe, why would you employ someone who's going to fall pregnant and then they're out of employment for 4 months because they're on maternity leave and all of that? These are policy positions that I think going forward we'll have to tackle. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zuma. I think you've given us really a mouthful, and I like what you're saying, that in order to legislate around the training of candidates, it would be important for government to put their money where their mouth is in terms of coordinating the whole thing. That's very well received, sir. Mr. Ngobese, are you with me? I want to come to you quickly, and I'll be taking the last candidates just a minute each and picking up on a few issues as we are nearing the close of this particular session. Kamdane, I mean, you spoke about the importance of mainly young or Black-owned firms, sharing information amongst each other. In your own insight and your own experiences, how would you say that can be done? Because, I mean, it's easy to say government needs to do this, big companies need to do this for us. But amongst yourself as peers, how would you encourage that you share information, knowledge, clients, whatever that may be in terms of business linkages amongst each other?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think that speaks to the willingness of us as young people to develop one another. I think, as I said before, it should be much easier for us to engage on other issues if we know that if I dedicate a certain portion of my time in development of others, financially I'm not suffering. Because one of the biggest problems that we have, we can talk about all other issues, but the biggest problem that we have is funding. So for us as legal practitioners, as directors of law firms, we need to have something that will enable us to be able to share some of our time in developing one another and in sharing knowledge, and also to go an extra mile in assisting others. So I think we need to start with the issue of funding. The small firms, they lack capacity. For example, they lack capacity to employ others. They may have the willingness to employ others, but they lack capacity because of funding. Two, they lack skills. For example, I've been talking with my little colleague, Mr. Nomvalo. There are skills that he possesses which I do not have, and also there are skills that I have, but that to find that he's not that well equipped about them. So for us to be able to meet and share skills, develop one another, share knowledge and all that, we also need to have the base of funding. We must know that if I take my time to engage in other activities which speak to development, that my business is not suffering. Because as the director of the law firm, my biggest triggers are that if I do this, am I still going to meet my wage bill? Am I still going to meet my rental expenses and other expenses? So in developing one another, it's very simple for us as attorneys because even our scope of work does allow us to exchange communications now and then. When you have a correspondent attorney, you always develop that sort of working relations and all that. But you cannot go a step further in sharing other important things and other important stuff because the priority of us as directors and as lawyers is money. So I think if you are given enough assistance with skills and money, then it will be much easier for us to share knowledge.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Ngobese. Mr. Nomvalo, in just a minute, I just want to pick you if you can get yourself ready, sir. I mean, you spoke of a whole lot of harsh realities, and some of the things were really heartening. And I'm sure certain people who've experienced this were almost into tears because, I mean, you touched to sexual harassment, you touched to unreasonable stipends that are being paid to people, even making reference to like 500 rand, the whole things. But what I liked about your input, you spoke about, the spirit of in the midst of all of that, it is possible, young person. You reminded me of the former president of the US, Barack Obama, who said, yes, we can. And in those ways, I just want you to say, just in a minute, how can you encourage people that are facing all the issues that you were tabling for us, from sexual harassment to being misused, being sent to buy groceries and all other things? How can you just in 1 minute encourage them to say, in the midst of all, it is possible? It seems as if we okay.
Yes,
yes,
thank you very much. Yes, I think Nelson Mandela conceptualized it very well when he said, it always seems impossible until it's done. So I'm saying we must not be conformist and conform to wrong norms in workplaces. It's upon us to transform the system. If we live it like this and take it like normal life, then it means even the incoming generation that will come after us will also suffer from the same predicament. So I'm saying, let us take it upon ourselves, even it means it invites pain. That pain will be temporal. It's not going to be forever. But it will also liberate the entire people who are in the profession and even the incoming generation. So I'm saying, if we leave it now and not challenge it, it's going to hinder us even when we're not in the profession. And we owe it to those who will come after us to fix these problems. I'm saying also, as I said as a disclaimer when I started, that we're not citing these problems with a view of discouraging those who aspire to be legal gurus. We are just sharing these problems because they are problems and we don't fear to share them. And our convictions tell us that we must challenge them because they are nasty and they don't deserve to be existing. So all of people who are lobbying, all legal practitioners were saying, we cannot throw everything to the government. We can't cast a total denigration to the government and donate our own problems to the government. Yes, we need the government as assistance, but also we have a role to play in transforming the profession.
Thank you so much, sir. I personally do believe that as government representatives, especially working with young people, I mean, having had this engagement today, we will be engaging with other young people who are within the industry, and you will, of course, yourselves and many other panel members be sort of like our ambassadors as well to make sure that young people get to us and we continue the conversation. And saying that, Kabazela Siya, I want to come you and take your last words, sir. But as I said, as you were giving your input, that I mean, you took us through the various, just in relation to the actual law, you know, from attorney to advocate and all other areas that you touched on. But really, I do want to pick your mind in saying, how can you open a young person's mind, especially that young person who's just finishing his articles, or that the young person that wants to start his business but was not brave enough, just like Umam Tembo? How would you say a person needs to look at an industry broadly in how it relates with other industries, as opposed to say just I'm an attorney or I'm an advocate? I mean, I made an example of a person who runs an agent for sports. How can you relate the industry to commerce and industry in general, say, in your 1 minute?
Thank you, Chair. I think, again, you know, it's important that young people do sufficient research. What often frustrates people is that they haven't done enough research, and then they feel that they are confined to either, yes, looking at the, you know, attorney profession, advocate profession, and so forth. So I often say, look at what interests you, and you will find that whatever interests you, you will be passionate about it. If you are passionate about something, you will go far and beyond to be able to attain it. So to answer your question, I'd say do sufficient research, and that must be based really on some of the areas of your interest. I also like to encourage, Chair, young people to do what we call VAC work. A lot of law firms often realize young people and their talents because they've been coming in doing VAC work. And you find that when they want to apply for articles, now there's that opportunity. That firm has seen this young lady, this young man, and they say, that's a bright young man. I remember him coming in for work. I'd be interested in working with him as a candidate attorney. So I'd say they must think outside the box. But as I said again, if it has to be, it's up to me. That's what they must always think of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mkhize. And to young people that have been streaming and engaging with us and sending messages on social media, this brings us to sort of like an end. We just have one item to address on our program, and then we'll be coming to an end. But certainly from my side as a facilitator, I do like to upfront thank the good panel that I had, and thank the young people that stayed with us the whole 2 hours engaging. And this was made possible by the coordination of the government of KwaZulu-Natal through the Office of the Premier that is championing all the issues of youth development, obviously working with all of us as youth directorates from different departments that are behind this whole thing. And without further ado, that is why I will then give the space to the Chief Director at the Department of the Premier, the Provincial Coordinating Department, Mr. Sabol Ntuli, who's the Chief Director for Youth Development, to give us the vote of thanks and bid us farewell to go home.
Program Director, our panelists and youth, and all protocols observed. Let me first thank the MEC, Shengu, who couldn't join us, but he was willing to be with us, but circumstances that actually came on his way. We thank him and apologize for him at the same time. Program Director, it is a great honor for me actually to be called upon to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion, especially in this Youth Month, whereby we are celebrating the 44 years of Youth, Soweto Uprising. This coincide also with the release of Tata Nelson Mandela, of which we are also commemorating his 30th out of release from prison. Program director, I must say that for the first time in our history, since 1994, we celebrate June 16 and other youth month programs visually. Indeed, this is our new normal. And as young people of 1976 stood against apartheid regime, the youth of today must unite and fight triple challenges, which is poverty, unemployment, and inequality. There is a fourth one that has been added, which is COVID-19. We find ourselves confronted by this invisible enemy in our lifetime, and we are sure and we are very confident in our young people in this country and the province that will beat this pandemic. On behalf of young people of the province, I'm delighted to thank our Honorable Premier and the Executive Council for their continued support for youth development in the province. We thank all our panelists, their commitment and taking time to join us. And we also thank the eloquent and aspiring presentation which they shared with us, which brought more light to young people of this province and the country at large. Indeed, the future of our country is in good hands. It is this kind of enthusiasm displayed tonight that continues to inspire greatness in pursuit of better life for young people. We heard you, our panelists. South Africa heard you. The province heard you. And it's up to us as government to respond. And it's up to us as youth of South Africa to change the status quo. We are humbled by the commitment also and support by our head of departments in the province and youth managers in implementation of youth programs in the province. We thank all the MSCs actually that have actually assisted us to put the program together and make sure that as a youth of KwaZulu-Natal, we are actually different, or we join other provincial youth. A special thanks also goes to our Director General, Dr. Nonhlanhla Mkhize, who I wish to mention that she is a champion in terms of promoting the vulnerable groups. Indeed, the province is in good hands. Without your support, DG, the vision and the mission, and it wouldn't be difficult to realize. A sincere gratitude goes to the program director, the facilitator, Mr. Tami Zondi, for driving this particular program in a professional manner. The engagement that you had with the panelists, it shows that umkanju bomvu in the industry, in this field. We thank you, Nondaba. I'm also grateful to our partners that actually assisted us, the IT team, the communication teams, the team from the Youth Chief Directorate that actually spent sleepless nights to ensure that this becomes a success. We hope that we all work together in the same spirit, like the famous Declaration of Freedom Charter that says these freedoms will fight for side by side throughout our lives until we have won our liberty. We thank the young people of our province and the country who honored this invitation and tuned in visually. This is a new normal for our province. This is a new normal for our country. With those few words, Program Director, we thank you for driving the program. I thank you.
LPC, LPC. I understand. I know in the operator.